Hey everybody, welcome to the Going Analog podcast. I'm your host Christina, and I'm excited to welcome back to the show Ruel Gaviola. Ruel is a board gaming showrunner, producer, host of several YouTube and Twitch channels, including Good Time Society, Rahdo Runs Through It, and Tabletop Tonight. He also podcasts for the 5 by, co-founded the Tabletop Live Network, and serves in the American Tabletop Awards Committee. There were so many more things I could say, but I have to stop because we have to get to the podcast. Hi, Ruel.
Hi, friends. How are you?
I'm excited to talk to you. We have lots of exciting things coming up. So as a preview, we'll be talking Gen Con real soon. Also here is Shu. He's so handsome and charming, and I just love him so much. And he wrote the intro for himself this week. So
Christine was busy today, and then she didn't have time to write the script, so I wrote it for her.
Yeah, I'm a little stinky. I went climbing outdoors, and I have not showered yet. So hello, you can't smell me. It's great. So normally, we let our guests pick one of the topics for us to discuss, but we're changing that up and just telling Ruel what we're talking about today. Why? Because the big show Gen Con's coming up, as we said, in a couple of weeks. So really, really soon, we want to do a quick preview of North America's largest tabletop gaming convention and chat about what we're excited to see or play. Also, we would normally pick one game each to highlight, but because we've been trying to cram in so many games to get them played before Gen Con, we just have too many to cover. So our other segment today will be all about the recent hotness on our tables and things that you want to check out too. So let's kick this off talking about Gen Con.
Yeah, so let's go around the table and just talk about the things that we're excited about for this year's edition. So I actually don't have a lot of individual games I'm picking out. There's one weird thing I'm kind of looking forward to. I feel like, Ruel, you tell me if you're also experiencing this. Christine and I are like, there's so many games lately about going to the moon. And I'm like,
and space and all sorts
but the moon specifically, like our moon, the Earth's moon specifically, as like subset of space games. So I'm like, there's at least a couple I could think of, and then I'm like, I'm starting to get them all confused. Like, what's the difference? So I'm kind of excited to see like what's the best moon game. It's very random, but
you can only play one,
yeah.
So you know.
But
wow, moon games! Really, I'm trying to think. I don't know if there's any moon games on my list.
Yeah, I need to. Oh, is that a bird? Oh, there's a bird trying to get through our window right there.
That's so
was that
random.
a bird flying in your window?
Yeah,
oh my
but
gosh.
It didn't get hurt.
I totally heard that.
Yeah, it didn't get hurt. It's just staring through the window at our plant.
This bird is very excited for Gen Con also.
Yeah,
they want you to talk about wingspan.
Yeah, this bird's trying to get a sneak peek at our podcast. So, but the other things I'm like, I always love Gen Con's my number one show of the year, followed closely by BGG Con. And for me, the reason why I like it so much is just it's so much energy. It's there's so much to see. There's like every exhibitor seems to be there, and then you just like go down aisles and aisles and then you just like everywhere you turn, there's another new game to check out. And then you see all your industry friends, you get to meet up with them. And then there's like, you're in another town, so you go out for dinner. And then there's all these different companies are having events in the afternoon or in the evening. So then you get to check out more games that way. So I just love being bombarded, just having this intense 4 days of just getting bombarded with constant games. And even when you're done with the show, at the end of the night, you'll hang out with your friends, you're playing with your friends or your like other industry people. And then you're getting exposed to more games. It's like, oh, I didn't know this was here. And then they're like, this is on sale. You could go buy it at the show tomorrow. Or this is a new game that just came out that everyone's excited to show off. So it's just nonstop gaming for 4 days. I love it.
Yeah, I love that too. Just what you were saying, Shu, just that energy of being there. It's like geek paradise for all of us. It's, nonstop bombardment of games and everywhere you go to. And what I love too is how Indianapolis has embraced Gen Con.
For
so
sure, yeah.
even like restaurants and stuff, you go there, they have like the geek specials, like, oh, try this. And, for gamers, like they have like some have like D&D related stuff and specials and whatnot. I really appreciate how they've embraced the con. Even like just flying in the airport, there's tables set up to play games. I love that they're set up in the airport. It's so cool to see the city embrace Gen Con.
Yeah, they super embrace it. It's just like, and we've heard stories from like Lyft drivers that about how the people who live there generally like Gen Con a lot because because Gen Con is right next to Lucas Oil Stadium. So there's a lot of big sports events there too. And it's convention towns. There's a lot of different conventions. But apparently, and then this should be no surprise to anyone, nerds are less rowdy than sports enthusiasts. Generally. So
right.
So they like they like that crowd because we come in and we're just like chilling, playing games, and generally not causing drunken incidents all over the city. So they do like us for that reason.
It's so true. I've heard the exact same thing from my Lyft drivers as well. They're always talking about, hey, they let you let them know you're coming in for Gen Con. They're like, we love you guys. You guys, you're respectful. You're not, being drunk and rowdy, but you have a good time. And, let's face it, we bring a lot of, we help out their economy a lot for the week or so that we're there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? And that all important nerd cred, so, but I'm looking for it also. So in case people are, curious about what strikes our fancy, I go in with a very open mind, right? And then we're going to do our wrap up show with Ruel as we've been doing the last couple of years. So people can tune in on that, listen to what was exciting. And I like doing it too, because we can't see everything and neither can you. So a lot of the times I hear about other games that you were able to see and be like, ooh, that sounds really exciting. And then we take notes and, lots more
I'm
games.
glad you brought that up. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Christina, because that's something I'm hoping continues in the future. I'm glad that we were able to do that at the end of the show, just sort of talk about some of our highlights and stuff, because we all have like very different experiences, right? Just going to different events and going to different booths and whatnot, and being able to see all of the games. Like, you'll never see all the games, of course, but just to get the highlights from your friends and from you two, it's really cool, and I can't wait to do the show with y'all again.
Yeah, you want to plug it real quick? Like, where can people watch your Gen Con wrap-up show with these two fabulous guests?
Yeah, with these two fabulous guests, folks, you'll be able to see us live on Gen Con TV, and it is 7 to 8 p.m. on the Saturday local time. So if you're on the West Coast, it's going to be 3 hours ahead, and if you're on the East Coast, that is local time 7 to 8 on Saturday. And we're just going to do a wrap-up show for an hour, just talk about some of our hits and maybe misses of the show, and it's going to be a great time. It's always wonderful, and I can't wait. So be sure to check us out then, folks.
Yeah, that will be the time when we first talk about some of the games we actually see. Mm-hmm. And then also a plug for us, we'll be recording our next post-Gen Con episode. This is our pre-Gen Con episode, our post-Gen Con episode in 2 weeks. We're going to be recording from the show with our mutual friend, Amanda Panda. And then so we'll just record this in Indianapolis and then put it out the Thursday after. So you'll get to hear our thoughts on the show as well. But I wanted to tell one quick story, and we've probably told this story on the podcast before. Ruel reminded me about how Indianapolis really embraces Gen Con and the crowds that come in. It's like, I think the last year was 70-some thousand people coming in for Gen Con. So one of my favorite stories was our first Gen Con. We were walking down the street and we were walking by this hotel, and there was someone in front, and we're looking at this hotel. They had a big menu in front. The menu is all changed to be very nerdy themed, right? Like you mentioned. But they're also saying, someone was out front the host was telling us, oh, we have tables upstairs because they're connected to a hotel. There's like, we have this area, all their little conference rooms open with tables so people could just come in and play games. No cost, free Mountain Dew for all the
It was so stereotypical.
Yeah.
But it was on tap. Free Mountain Dew on tap.
Yeah, free Mountain Dew. They just like all the Mountain Dew you want to drink, and you can just hang out there. And then there's also a server taking drink orders, so you can order drinks from the bar. And so they wanted to make some money that way, obviously. But they're just like, we just open up the space. Just come on in. Like, no obligation, no pressure. Just come play. And we play games there. Mm-hmm. And somebody
taught us Aquatica there that year.
No, Abyss.
Oh, Abyss. You're right.
So we bought Abyss because I wanted a specific box for this game. Mm-hmm. And then we were breaking out. This is this game. It's an older game about, like, you're building
set collecting.
Yeah, set collecting.
Undersea
empires and stuff. But anyways, as we're breaking it open to read the rule book, this guy at the table right next to us said, oh, I know that game really well. I could just teach it to you. And that's another part of this fun vibe about Gen Con is you're just there with all these people who just love the hobby so much. And generally speaking, there's no way it's 100% of the people, but generally speaking, people are really nice. They're like, oh, I'm happy to show you this, or I'm happy to tell you about this, or I'm happy to share this with you. It's just like a lot of positive energy surrounding this show.
Yeah, that's that is a great point. The whole positivity of it. Like I've always had a great experience at Gen Con. And like you said, Shu, it's just one of those things where we're all there geeking out together and it's easy to share that love of the hobby with each other. So yeah, very, very cool thing.
Everybody understands the board games you talk about there. It's great.
Yeah.
They don't ask like Monopoly, which is
right. Yeah, Christina, it's like Michelle and I, like when we go to stuff like this, like these are our people, right? They just get it, So yeah, it's such a cool feeling.
So, Ruel, were there a couple of games that you were specifically excited to see at Gen Con?
Yeah, a few of them. The number one on my list that I'm really excited about is Rock Hard 1977 from DeVere. The designer is, I'm sure Jackie from here in the Southern California area. She's wonderful, and it's based on her experiences being in a rock band back in the 70s.
The Runaways,
she was in a tiny little band called the Runaways with Joan Jett and Lita Ford and other folks. So I'm really excited to see. I've seen an early production copy of it. I don't know any of the rules. I think it's a worker placement game.
That's what I hear. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And just Jackie is just an amazing person. Like talking to her, she has, this really interesting history of like, not only was she bass player in the Runaways, but then she's
Jeopardy
an attorney.
Champion. Yeah.
Jeopardy, like multiple time Jeopardy, like 4 or 5 times. Right. And she's just really cool. I actually played that game Hardback with her on Board Game Arena. Mm-hmm. I got skunked. I thought I was doing well. I was like, oh my gosh, she's like next level. Yeah. She is amazing. But she's super nice. And I'm excited to see her, bring that game out to the public. And DeVere, they've been really knocking it out of the park these days with their titles. So they're one of my favorite companies. So that's probably the one that I'm looking forward to most.
Yeah. How about you, Christina?
I've had a few, there's a bunch of games that we've been trying to play. So many newer ones too. I heard from Suze, she tweeted about Landmarks, and she said that it was a cryptid meets code name sort of game, which I haven't had a chance to see. So I'm excited to check it out, see what that's like.
Are you first name dropping basis? You can tell the audience who Suze is. Suze,
just online, Sue Sheldon, content creator and all around works for Restoration Games also. Knows basically plugged into all the hot new games, I think. So
yep.
And then I am sort of interested in the CGE game SETI. So I do sometimes really like some CGE games, and it's about searching for extraterrestrial life. Not necessarily going to the moon, but one of the space games that are coming up for sure.
Maybe some of them are on the moon.
Maybe. I'll say. Well, not much, nice. Not very welcoming there. And then randomly, I was reading about this game called Hi-Fi, about putting together, a song or something, just like a fun music theme also. So I'm like just interested in that for like vinyl albums and stuff. So yeah.
That's one that looks like a record player.
It looks like a record player, which looks
I was going to say, Hi-Fi's the one with like a little turntable, right?
So. Or something? I have no idea how it plays, but I'm just like curious.
Yeah, that looks neat.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Shu?
That's basically, I'm more like, there aren't too many specific games I'm like, I gotta see that one, I gotta check that out, but I'm just excited for the show in general. I'm always excited to go, just like we talked about, the energy, all of that stuff going on there. And there's so many events, it seems like this year, more than normal. I mean, Ruel, you're more of a regular content creator than we are. Like, are you noticing this too? Do you think more publishers are having events and media events and stuff?
Yeah, I think you're right in that sense. I feel like it's really gone up in number of like different events that are like off-site. I think publishers see the the appeal of it. And I prefer those events where it's just you're sort of away from the convention center in a different type of environment. And I think when I saw you last time at that one pub for, I don't know if it was like Flat River Games or something.
Yeah, it was Flat River.
Where like, to me, I would rather do that than be in the convention hall with 1 million people and it's super loud and it's sort of, I don't know, I find it hard to focus, but get me at like a bar, pub type thing and where it's a lot smaller crowd, a little more manageable. I like those type of events. So yeah, I've gotten quite, a bunch of invites, very, very kind of publishers to invite me to, and you all, I'm sure you have as well, different events offsite or just, media specific events as well. rather than just saying, hey, sign up on my Calendly and let's book an appointment at the booth, which is fine. But I prefer these events that are sort of either offsite or just in their own like area away from the booth.
Yeah, I'm mixed on those because I worked in a video game industry for many, many years. And then so I've gone to big conferences there. And the offsite ones are always like, it's nice because sometimes they have couches. You could kind of like AEG, the publisher last year, had some things in their hotel suite. So you kind of got to take a break. You get to take a load off your feet, sit down. It's air conditioned. There's fresh water. That's really nice. And it was right across the street, so no big deal. But some of these things, it's like now we're in the middle of summer. It's really humid in Indianapolis. And if you have to walk a few blocks away and you have your backpack, you're carrying other things, it's just sort of like, oh man, I wish it was just right next door or right on premise. But once you're there, then it's like, yeah, it's nice to be able to have the extra space and things like that. So. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. My secret for dealing with the heat in Indy during the summer
is
what's that?
I hate to say I take lifts everywhere. I'll spend a couple of bucks for a lift just so I can be there. I know it's a totally frivolous and wasteful thing, but you know what? Darn it! If I'm going to walk a couple of blocks, I will just pay for the lift and share it with someone.
That actually might be a
for certain
good idea. Yeah,
certain times of the day.
Because I remember going to that Flat River event and I was like, it is so hot and sweaty. And by the time you get there, you just feel really gross.
Tired.
And it's not even that far. Yeah. I'm just being a big baby.
It's really not that far, but I took a lift. Yeah. So
I might do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's share. If we got the same time, we'd love to do it.
So along the way, we wanted to talk about a lot of new games too, because we were trying to squeeze them all in before Gen Con. And we broke them down into some general weight or complexity categories. So we wanted to talk about party games, light games, medium games, and then heavy games we've been playing. So let's go first. There's a lot of games we got to cover.
Yeah, so these are games that we recently received a lot of, especially media copies of games. And then we're like, okay, yeah, we want to get them all covered. But we're like, oh man, Gen Con's going to come out and it'll just completely throw a ton more work at us. So let's get some of these games played and covered because, we're only selecting ones that we either requested or we were very interested in. So we're kind of like, these are games that we knew we would kind of like on some level. And then we got the chance to try them. So for our party game pick, we picked a game called What on Earth Are You Talking About? And so have you played this one, Ruel?
I have not. I love the title of it, so I'm dying to hear about this game.
So it's like really well produced. It's like high quality. Like all these cards come in this magnetic flapped box. The art's really nice. The instructions were entertaining, and it didn't feel like a cheap party game. It felt like a high production party game. But it's all cards, and a basic premise is you're taking turns playing aliens. There are two teams. And then the aliens are trying to understand Earth concepts, human concepts. Like it could be twerking, it could be a Trojan horse. What were
a toe ring?
A toe ring. All these things that are just like, some of them are a little bit more pop culture than others, but they just want to understand these things. So you're playing in two teams. The first one to make a full orbit. This is just a score track to score the end points wins the game. But you'll take turns playing an alien. So if I were the alien, for example, Christina will draw. And now that I think about it, we should have grabbed a card and tried it on Ruel, actually, because it's really funny. So all the Earth people, those premises, they set it up like aliens are looking for intelligent life, but they found planet Earth instead. So kind of a little shot at Earth, but it was really funny. So Christina, and let's say you two are on my team. You two would both receive these cards that will be some random letters and some random blanks. And then so it might be like 10 letters or so, like T blank, L blank, R, Q, something blank. Like you have to give me a clue to describe twerking, for example, using letters, words that begin with those letters in order. So you start talking. So everyone's like sitting around looking at these cards and you might say something that sounds completely idiotic, like, dance, butt, behind, shake, up, down, something like that, right? And then, so there's another party game called Poetry for Neanderthals that it kind of reminds me of, where you're just talking in very simplistic terms. You sound like a caveman, but the game, all these cards tell you you have to use these letters, you have to use them in this order, and you're trying to describe concepts. So then we're playing last night, we have all these teammates just shouting, it just sounds like nonsense. But then once in a while, someone will get onto something good, and everyone's like, oh yeah, that's good. But it's up to the alien guesser to see if they can even put it together.
The best clues for twerking, and just our friend Matt could not get it. We were like, butt bouncing up and down, bounce, bouncy butt, and he's like, not.
Yeah.
Sexy dance. No.
So yeah, it comes with a ton of cards with different concepts, like again, all these human concepts that the aliens are trying to understand, and then all the humans, all the Earthlings, are just using really simplistic words to try to describe them, but again, you're forced to use these letters in order. So, and then they do little fun things like if one team's getting really far ahead, there's a catch-up mechanic. There's ways to kind of intercept and steal answers. So like if we're tied, it's like we get a chance to kind of go against you and have our team guess as well as your team, things like that. But I really love team-based party games. Those are my favorites rather than individual winners. I love like when there's a team because you get to celebrate with people, but have to be competitive at the same time. And this one was like, from the description, we were like, this sounds really funny. And we were laughing throughout the night while playing this because it's just, it leads to so much ridiculous stuff that's coming out of people's mouths.
Yeah, you totally sold me on the game after talking about twerking. Like, that just sounds hilarious. Like, this is my type of party game right here. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah. And it's not really like, it doesn't have to be dirty or anything like that, or like sensational. It's just innocent, silly. It's just silly, which is what a party game should be. Yeah. How about you? Do you have a party game that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, and this is also crosses over into games I'm looking forward to at Gen Con. This is a Gen Con release, but I got an early copy, and I actually played this the first time at Dice Tower West, and I'm not sure, maybe you have a copy as well, but it's Landmarks from Floodgate Games.
Oh, that's the one I was curious about.
This one, Christina, it is Codenames meets Cryptid. That's the best way I can explain it. So it's it plays cooperatively, or you can play team-based. But I've only played cooperatively. One player is the Pathfinder. They will know where all the stuff on the board is. The other players, you're working together. They're trying to find the exit, to out of this. So basically it's a map, a board of, just a bunch of hexes, and you're going to have hex tiles. They are blank and they're, dry erase boards. So the Pathfinder has the words, just like in Codenames, has a little chart. They'll start with 3 starting words, just single words, and then you put those down, and then what you're trying to do is guide the rest of your team to the exit. There's also traps, there are curses, there are amulets to get rid of the curses, and then of course there's treasures, which will give you more points, and if you find the exit with a certain number of treasures, you've won the game. So you only start with 7 tiles, so those go by pretty quickly, and what you're trying to do is the Pathfinder looks at the board, there's 3 words to start with, and they're going to give a 1-word clue. So maybe I have the word, meeple and dice and trophy, and then I have to pick a word where I think I can lead you to the path based on how close that word is to my clue. So like dice, let's say dice and meeple. I could say something like game. And then you would put the hex right next to dice and meeple if you feel like they cover both those words. Or if it's a single word, you put it, adjacent to that. So along the way, you're just, you're placing these tiles with your words or with my words that I've given and trying to get the path. So once you place one down, I'm going to look at my map and say, oh, you've just revealed a trap. Darn. So you lose one of the tiles. So now you have fewer tiles to get out of the board. Or maybe it's water. Water refills your tiles. So now you have your max of 7 tiles again and whatnot. I think this is a brilliant game. When I played the demo at Dice Tower West, I was like, this is going to be a huge hit. And after the several games I've played so far, it has been a big hit with my friends in my group. It's wonderful.
We did not see it.
Cryptid meets Codenames. That's all it is. But it works so well.
Is it fully cooperative?
Or team-based?
Oh.
Yeah, or team-based. So then, team-based, you would have 2 separate teams, and you're just trying to race to get to the exit first and have the most treasures as well. It's fantastic.
Oh, we'll have to check that out.
Yeah. It's on my list already to check out. So there you go.
All right. And then moving on to light games, one we played recently was Biomos. I think I'm pronouncing it
Biomos? I don't know.
But Christina, you learned and taught that one, and we... Basically, North Star sent it to us, but like Christina loves kind of anything that's kind of nature-y or science-y in nature. But yeah, tell us.
It's pretty abstract, actually.
Yeah, very.
But it's a very light filler game. And you have a board where you have like a semicircle where you can put tokens into them. Tokens are like different terrain types or biomes of this planet, and you're trying to build out a planet that's going to score you the most points. It's basically a huge pattern matching game. So as you like draft these terrain tiles, you're trying to form the patterns that are going to score you points, either these smaller goals or where they get refreshed immediately, or these longer term, bigger goals that don't get refreshed. So it's like a race for the big points, and also can I score little points along the way. There's a family mode that's very straightforward, where you're just put them together, and you can slide your tokens around. So as you add them in, you can add them in between tokens. You can't rearrange, except for one very specific exception, but most of the time you're just sort of sliding them or sticking them into the correct spot and hoping to score a pattern.
Yeah, so if you can visualize it, like the video game, like a lot of us, the first time we saw this game, it reminded us of the old game. I think it's Zuma. It's like a bunch of marbles that are all in a line, and you can take marbles.
They're so cool as marbles.
Yeah,
but they're tokens.
They're like cardboard discs that are in this kind of trail of semicircles. But yeah, you can place them in between, and you're trying to, like, one objective card might be like, it wants ice, forest, ice in that order. So you're trying to, when you're drafting and taking these tokens, you want to place them in the right order to complete these, but other people are too.
The interesting part for me is when you play the sort of regular mode, the non-family mode, everybody has access to these same sort of powers that are going to, it's like a planet power, and you can do one swap or something along the way, most of the rounds of the game. And then now you can sort of be clever and be like, oh, well, I know that, I can swap out these ice ones for a random tile. Or when this is next to that, I can switch this into a forest tile. So there's ways to sort of plan ahead or try to plan ahead and force these patterns in ways other than just grabbing the correct tile. So, the more I played it, the more interesting that strategy was. So yeah, I played it a lot on BGA, and then in person, it was sort of fun sliding things around.
Yeah, and that non-family mode it got really puzzly, because you would sit there and think like, wow, if I take this, I could combo and flip it into this, or redraw this token. And then you had, all of a sudden, it's like, for such a simple game, because in the beginning, you're like, it almost feels too simple. Your first few turns, it's like, so it has a nice ramp up that way, because it's like, maybe this game's too kind of simple and light for us. But then you start to like, oh, this is getting really puzzly. But you could keep it super simple for the family mode if you wanted to. Yeah, too. So that was a more puzzly and challenging game than I initially thought. So I really liked it for that reason. And also, the other thing about the game is because you have a limited amount of space, the more tokens you put in towards the end of the game, you have fewer options too. So as the game complexity goes up, because you have more choices, you also have fewer choices at the same time, because you're like, I can't put anything everywhere. I only have a few more open spots to wrap up the game. So it's like all these interesting things working with each other to create a really nice balanced game, I think.
Yeah, it's a great little, very quick filler too. So,
yeah, that's cool. I love games that do that, where they have like either the introductory mode or the family mode, where it's the really basic part of the game. And yeah, it's easy to learn and you can play it. The first example that comes to the top of my head is like Santorini. You can just play without the gods' powers, right? Which is fine. It's a decent little abstract game. Add in those gods' powers or, whatever, and all of a sudden it's a totally different game, right? You have different ways you can move, different ways you can jump, different ways you can even win. This sounds, nothing like Santorini, but just that fact that it has that, hey, here's the family mode, then here's like the gamer mode, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
I always dig that about about games that can do that.
And how about your light game pick?
Light pick, yeah. So this is a game that's been around for, I want to say 15 years or so, but it's being re-released by Pandasaurus Games called Finca, Finca.
Yes.
I'd never played it until this new version. This is a wonderful game.
I really
awesome.
like it.
Yeah. You played it, right? Resource management.
Well, it's funny because when you mentioned because this segment's about new games, right? And then you wrote down Finca in your notes to us. We were chatting about this beforehand. I'm like, this is a really old game. What are you talking about? I didn't realize they're remaking it.
I know.
Yeah.
I follow up on the news.
Yeah,
so.
Christina knew, but I had no idea.
I actually played the old version many years ago, several years ago, thanks to our friend Nam. He has one of the original printings, and I liked it so much. I was like, oh, I think I want to buy this, but it was out of print. And so like the only ones I could find were like pretty expensive, and I never got around to it. So I'm excited for this.
Yeah. And this one, it's got Vincent Dutray art, which I know a lot of people love his art, and it looks wonderful. Quickly, it's a resource management pick up and deliver, and you've got this sort of rondelle where you're moving to collect resources. And it's a simple game. You just move your little farmer and then collect resources, and you're trying to fulfill orders on the different regions of the board. But what's really neat is this like sort of I don't know if it's hidden complexity or just hidden depth to the game. So to move your farmer on the board, like if you have one farmer on one spot, you just move one spot, collect one resource. But if you land on another spot, you're going to get, like with another farmer, you'll get 2 resources or 3. And then the next turn around over, if you want to move that same farmer, let's say you collected 3 previously, now you have 3 movement. So it's a really tricky way to do movement. And then you can deliver if you have a donkey cart. And donkey carts you only get when you go around the whole thing once or pass the donkey cart thing up. Yeah. Oh, it's so good. I was very, very surprised about this game. You're filling these orders, and then when you fulfill the last order in a region, there's like a little stack of 4 each, I think. That region's going to score the Finca, which you're going to place on the board. You put all the Fincas out, the game is over. But each region scores differently. So it may be like, if you complete this region by fulfilling a bunch of different orders, then the region scores based on, hey, who has the most fish, or whoever has the most olives, or whatever the resource is, and then you'll score points. So, it's a wonderful blend of resource management, pick up and deliver. It's an easy game to get to the table, but again, I think it's that hidden the hidden depth of the game that really appeals to me. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm excited to be able to play it now. Yeah,
even though you have played it before.
Yeah.
We did have another game too. We wanted to talk about Clash of Magic Schools from Uwe Rosenberg, and I think was it Naide art also?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it's a 2-player specific game that is not usually in our wheelhouse, but, I was like, I like Uwe stuff and, I want to check it out. And so it's a really weird game at first when I had to, was I teaching it or did you teach it?
Oh my God, I taught it.
Oh, great job. Great job.
Did I teach that game?
Oh, so, I teach a lot of
well, let me talk about the learning of the game. Okay.
Yeah.
We still have this in our light game category, right? And it's like very, it was not, I needed to read the instruction book twice to kind of wrap my head around it. I'm like, what do you do here? There's a lot of different actions you could take. And basically the idea is the setup is like you're 2 competing schools, like with magician apprentices. So it feels kind of very like if they could get the Harry Potter license, they probably would have. But we're competing schools and we're setting out our students to do different trials. And so the students are different cards in different suits. So there's like the red students and purple students and so on, representing different types of magic, like fire magic or air magic and so on. And then you could place them. You have a marker that indicates what arena they could go to, where you could place student cards, what challenges you could take on in those arenas and things like that. But, and the other part of this, so there's several moves, and then on your turn, you can take as many actions as you want.
Afford.
So so you're going to always draw cards. You have plenty of cards to work with. I'm going to put down some students here. I'm going to transfer some students to another arena. I'm going to try to get this trial here. I'm going to cast spells. The way the way spells work is if you have 3 of one like color of students in a row. So if I had 3 red cards in a row in this pile, I could take the middle one out. Because you're not supposed to use magic in these competitions, so that student gets kicked out by the referees. But then you get to cast a spell, and each color will cast different spells. A lot of them are very aggressive. It's like stealing a trial from your opponent, or you will reset their trials and throw them all back into the deck.
Which means burning them all.
Yeah.
Like saying that.
So there's and then, or you can make your opponent discard half of their hand. So it's all very aggressive, and it's just like, it's not normally the kind of game Christina and I would like. But again, we're very curious. Like, Uwe Rosenberg is one of our favorite game designers. He's known very much for like farming, two types of like
breeding animals, and feeding your family.
Hardcore heavy Euro games about farming and resource management, and this just felt very, very different for his kind of style of game. And then on our first play, the first couple turns were still a little bit
confused.
Yeah, like wait,
it's just very different.
I can do this or I can't do this, and like I flip through the book, and it's not the rule book isn't big. It's really so. But then, because you're not used to like all of these actions, you're like, once you got the hang of it,
and in a couple rounds.
Yeah, in a couple of rounds, and in our subsequent games, we're like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool because you could take all your actions in one turn, as many as you can. It sets up really cool combos.
Yeah.
So you're like, I'm going to put these students here. I'm going to cast a spell, and then I'm going to steal this trial. And all of a sudden, you swung from like 3 points to or 10 points, maybe something like that. You're just like, you just do these really awesome moves, and the way the game ends is if someone has like, I think it's like 15 points, and the other person has 9 or fewer points. That's an instant win. So it feels like a big tug of war with not a lot of small movements, but a lot of big movements. It's like, ooh, oh no, Christina's going to win. It's like, oh, I made a big move, and now it's back to me. And you just don't know who's going to win. So it's like a very exciting head-to-head game. And then, again, it takes a little getting used to, but once you get used to it, it's like, all right, it clicks.
It was a very weird ramp up of understanding the rules. And then once you understand it, then you're like, ooh, this is powerful, and really liked it. But like, when I was listening to the rules, because you taught the game, Shu, I was just like, what is going on? What? I can do this? What? And it was just like very hard to wrap my mind around at first because it felt very different from other games that I've played.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you want it to look like something like a Lost Cities. It looks that simple. It looks like Lost Cities simple.
But definitely more depth than that. Yeah.
So your mind thinks like this should be, and it's really colorful. It doesn't look like any of his other games, like the dry European style game.
Yeah.
It looks very modern, very colorful. And you're just like, oh, this is, again, it's just so different. And once you get used to it, it's like, there's a pretty remarkable game underneath.
Well, and just based on your description, like I remember when we put this on the list, I was like, I'm really curious about this game. And I really want to play it because it sounds nothing like an Uwe Rosenberg game, right? You're not feeding your family.
Animals having sex at all.
You're not laying any tiles, or anything. It's like, what? And I like that tug of war aspect. I love games like that where it's just this battle back and forth. I love games like that. So this one definitely seems like my jam. And I know Michelle
super satisfying when you can take those points back.
Yeah, so. Like sometimes I'll watch Christine do a turn. I'm like, oh my God, I thought I was doing well. And also she's like, I'm going to do this, then this, then this, then this. And none of it takes that long. It's not like you would get bogged down in analysis paralysis either. So it's just like, kind of brilliant in that way of like, I could feel really clever and make these really big moves and huge combos, but I didn't spend 15 minutes trying to analyze and piece it all together. Just like, I could do this and do this, and that leads me to this. So very cool.
What about a medium game for you, Ruel?
Medium game, yeah. So this one is Archeos Society. I think I'm saying it right. This is basically the re-implementation of Ethnos. And I got to let you know, right before we came on to record the podcast, I just played it for like the fourth time before I came on here. That's why I was running a little bit late to the podcast, folks.
That's a good excuse. That's the only acceptable excuse you can have for being late for a podcast. Game, right? You're playing a board game.
I have mixed feelings about this, and I'm going to tell you the main down or the main thumbs down is the graphic design. I played it several times, and it's just, they made some really bad decisions, in my opinion, where like the colors are really muted, and they went with iconography, whereas Ethnos, it would say like, hey, these are the dwarves or these are the giants on each faction, right? They didn't do that. They just went with icons, which works, but it's a lot of, hey, what does this do again? Like, it just doesn't, I don't know, it just didn't jive with me and my friends. Basically, if you have never played Ethnos, it's an area control game using cards. I like to call it Ethnos Ticket to Ride meets Blood Rage, where it's drawing cards, playing sets of cards, and then putting your tokens on the map. Archeos Society changes that where now it's tracks instead of a big map. So there's different tracks for each faction. So each faction will score differently, and you're going up these tracks. It's like a race up on the tracks to get victory points and unlock abilities. I really like that part of the game. Christine, I know we talked before, you're a fan of Ethnos, right?
Yes.
I think
We both
are.
Yeah.
Okay.
We love Ethnos.
Yeah, I loved Ethnos. I really wanted to love Archeos Society except for that graphic design. It was just so bad. But the game itself, I think there's parts of it I like better than Ethnos. As far as the tracks, there's some things where you go up a track, and as you play cards, just like in Ethnos, you place your piece there on the map. This time, instead of a map, you're just moving up a track. But as you move up the track, it'll unlock different abilities. So one track, if you go up, you're going to get 2 points at the end of the round. And now at the end of your turn, after you discard your cards, you're going to draw like 3 or 4 cards from the deck. Other ones are like you're going to get more points at the end. There's some you'll recognize from Ethnos, like the Merfolk. They're called, I think, the Adventurers in this one, where you go up that track and it'll unlock extra movement on another track. Oh, God. I would so want to love this game. I really like it. I will say I really like it. I'm waiting for my buddy Daryl. He's my main gaming buddy besides Michelle. He'll do a lot of his own versions of games. He'll just like create, his own theme or his own graphic design and just send it off to Game Crafter. And I told him, dude, you got to do Archeos Society. This graphic, I want to see you do this. So I really, really enjoyed this game. I was wondering why it didn't really pick up steam when it came out a couple of years ago. Now I know why. The graphic design was just really held this game back. But the gameplay itself is so good. But
it sounds like it's still worth trying if you've played a lot of Ethnos.
Definitely worth trying, especially if you're an Ethnos fan like I am. Like, I'm going to keep Ethnos. I'll probably keep Archeos Society as well. Because of those different tracks and different abilities for that. I really want to like it more. Because I love Ethnos.
Does it support the same number of players as Ethnos usually did? Okay.
Yeah, so it's still 2 to 6 players, still play the like different ages or whatever. Actually, a couple of changes. So they nerfed the points for like the biggest band, or in this case, expedition. So 6 cards that you play at once used to be 15, now it's 12 points. And then when there's nothing in the open market, when you draw a card from the top of the deck, now you draw 2. If there's nothing in the market, you draw 2. Otherwise, you just take 1 from the market. I think it's a subtle change, but it's really cool. And it really incentivizes you to do smaller bands at first, because to go up those tracks, you'll play 1 card or 2 cards that'll bump you up a track. To continue on that track, you're going to have to continually play bigger bands. So if you want to get to the end of the track, you start it with 1, 2, 3, and then by the end of the track, you have to get 6 to get to the top of that track. Oh, and one of the tracks is really cool. It's like a press your luck thing. You go up as high as you want, and then a certain spot, you're going to have to say, I'm going to stop here, take the points, and then go back to the end of the track. So I was trying to do this last game. I got up to, it would have been like 12 points. I was like, no, I can go for the 20 point. Sure enough, the round ended right there. So I lost. I didn't get any of those points. I love all the different elements to it. So unfortunately, that graphic design held it back, but it's still a solid game in my book. That's Archeos Society.
Does it play as fast as Ethnos? Like in terms of like the individual turns in Ethnos are just like draw a card or play some cards, and it's like so quick.
And it's the same thing. It's really snappy. It's interesting though. Like I feel like the Ethnos was like family friendly-ish, right? I feel like they wanted to make it more family friendly by just having tracks rather than area control on a map. But with those different tracks, I should say this. With the advanced size of the tracks, right? That's the one we played. The advanced size of the tracks, it's a lot thinkier than I expected.
Okay.
Whereas if you play the basic tracks, totally fine family game. It's totally, easy to explain and you'll be able to see. But boy, those advanced tracks, that's where you start thinking, I can combo this to go on that track. I can use this to go on this track as well and whatnot. And maybe I want to push my luck here or other things. Oh, it's so good. Yeah. Darn. I'm talking myself into, I love this game. What am I talking about? I'm complaining about the graphic design. It's so good.
We'll need to check it out.
Just sticker them all. Sticker them.
Our medium game pick is Evenfall. Did I teach that? Did I learn and teach that game,
No,
Christina?
I did that one. I did that one.
All right. Why don't you tell us about it?
So Evenfall what was the theme? It was like witches and elders. Yes. It was a very involved theme. It's a beautiful cover with like this giant tree, and you play different covens of witches, preparing for a new era, trying to be the new, I guess, sort of predominant witch clan. And so it had some very interesting mechanics in it that we haven't seen. There were lots of comboing. You're only going to play 3 rounds, right? Mm-hmm. It's like only 3 rounds. And then you're getting some resources in the very beginning. Then you are going to take turns trying to play certain cards, right? And there's like the way that the cards come in, they're like different locations. And you're going to do rituals on them. So that it seems like a lot. When I explained the game, there was like a lot of different layers to it. But essentially, when you have these locations on the outer layer, then you're going to be able to harvest resources from them. But they're not going to score points for you. So if you want to bring them into the inner circle, it's going to take some powers that you have to activate. And then they no longer provide resources, but now they're going to give you points. So you're balancing that aspect. Along with, you have witches and you have elders. And the witches you can put in a bunch of places, but the elders can only work usually in rituals areas that are on the inner circle already. So you're like trying to save these workers and like bringing them in so you can put these workers in on the inner level too. So there's those aspects. You can bring in a bunch of specialists that give you special abilities, things like that. And you're balancing all these resources that you're getting. And at the very end, where you've placed your witches in these different locations to grab these other cards in the first place, then they have this sort of area control fight, essentially, to see who has the most power there, which will generate a bunch of battle bonuses for you. So there's just like a lot of layers to this game.
Yeah. Parts of it remind me of the classic game. You ever play Elysium, Ruel?
I have not played Elysium, okay. No.
It kind of reminds of that. Like there's like if the cards at the higher level, it does these things. But at some point, you're going to want to move into the lower level to gain points, to win the game. But yeah, there's a little bit of worker placement. There's a little bit of tableau building. These locations, you have to build out locations because they're sort of the foundations for you to put rituals on. When you recruit people like familiars and specialists, so you have to decide, do you want them to be part of the council? So they provide end game bonuses or ongoing bonuses. They could provide one-time bonuses. They could provide tap actions.
The cards are super powerful.
And it is such. I almost fell instantly in love with this game. And the art is just gorgeous. It's one of the best looking games I've seen art wise in a long time. It has this. It's all little fantasy, little otherworldly, but more almost a bit of a sepia tone. Everything. It just feels like it's autumn, and everything's like gold and browns, and it's really rich. And then the characters are really well drawn. You have these cool layered boards that everyone has. You can play a simple mode and an advanced mode. I will say I made the mistake of teaching a friend. We just played a 2-player game of it in advanced mode, and it's his first time, and it was a bit too much. Yeah. And I'm like, I should have started him with a basic game, but
he still killed you.
Yeah, he still destroyed me. But it's just, there's so many different combos and different ways to think about.
I've never seen him have so much analysis paralysis. Our friend now.
Yeah.
It was just like, whoa. Yeah. But he's very good at finding card combos, and he saw the potential for so many card combos, but it was a lot for him to keep track of.
Yeah. Again, I started him with the advanced mode, which was a mistake. And I also wanted more complicated factions because he could do asymmetrical powers in advanced mode.
They're very asymmetrical.
But when you play basic mode, like, because when Christine and I played a 2-player basic mode game, it didn't even take half the time to play. So that was a mistake on my part. But it was like, it was one of those like, okay, don't start with the advanced mode, play the basic mode because there's already a lot going on. But it is such a neat game. It's just like, it just looks great. It feels so different. It doesn't overstay its welcome. And there's just so many clever combos. You're like, if I do this, I could do this, and that'll set me up, and I'll start, all these resources will come in. But if I don't quickly pivot to points, it's like, I'm going to get outscored at some point. And then you could do some powers that might borrow a little bit from combo off of what your opponents are doing. And then it's like, okay, I see Christina's trying to build this. I'm going to build this thing to enrich myself whenever she does that thing. You can also, gathering of resources, like your income isn't a separate phase. It's a power you actually do. So there is an income phase, but there's also a point where, like, for my action this round, I'm going to trigger all of my locations and collect all those resources. So you have to decide when you want to do that. Do I want to send my witches out to get more locations before I do that? It's just every decision is a lot of fun. And they're coming out with an expansion. This actually, I think this came out like just late last year, I believe. And there's a new expansion coming out with new factions. And I'm already excited about that. I'm like, I can't wait to get more of this game. It's just, and I think it's just one that I haven't heard a lot of people talking about. I don't think it's hit a lot of radars. Like, have you heard of this game, Evenfall?
Yeah. So I've heard of this game and I've seen the cover. It looks beautiful. So hearing you talk about it, I really want to try this. It sounds great. I love games that make you feel smart with finding all those combos, and it sounds like this is one of those.
Yeah, it's so much a Clash of Magic Schools. It's like very rewarding where you're like, ooh, I could do this, and this feels really good. And again, it doesn't overstay its welcome. Like it can be maybe on the heavier side of medium, I think.
Yeah, I'd say so.
But it doesn't it's not a long game. It's not like a 3-4 hour Euro or anything like that. So,
well, we only play 2 players. And so one thing that's still a question in my mind is if I play this at the full player count of 4 and I'm playing the asymmetrical mode, like that's probably going to take a really long time.
I think so.
So I would watch out for something like 2 player was actually pretty good head to head, except I think at least 3 players might make the sort of battle thing a little bit more interesting, because when there was just 2, basically you have your power of your units that are in each location, and then you secretly show how much, select how much magic mana you're going to use to buff up your combat, essentially. But when there's only 2 people, then it's like, you can sort of count that pretty easily. So,
Yeah, you get that 3rd or 4th player. It's a little more dynamic, right?
I think so.
It's also the game board. The middle of the board gets kind of bigger because there's 2 different regions in a 2-player game. There's 3 regions for more player counts, so then you have more options as well.
Yep.
But yeah, there's just like there's some engine building in there too, and a lot of times you get weary of games that try to like, oh, it's deck building and meets worker placement, meets area control. Like sometimes it's not a good thing. But in this game, it does a little bit of a lot of different genres and mechanics, I think it just comes together really beautifully.
For me, I've only played it once. She just played it twice. And so I just found it really interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about having only 3 rounds. I think it doesn't overstay that way, but I also sort of wanted to do more.
Oh no, I think it's a perfect length.
So anyway, we disagree on this a little bit, but yes. But it's definitely a fascinating game.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice.
All right, we're almost at the end. What's your heavy game pick?
So my heavy game pick, I played it exactly one time and it totally blew my mind away. And it's one of those games that you play something and you just want to immediately play it again. It's PAX Pamir 2nd edition and a Cole Worley game. I was just blown away. But it's basically a tableau builder with troops on a map type gameplay. And what's interesting is like you don't control just one faction. You can switch factions throughout the game, and you're trying to dominate different areas. And I felt like, how do I say it? So I felt like I understood how to play the game pretty easily. Like it's okay, take a card, play it, do the powers, and then that'll unlock some other stuff. But then to play it well, I did not do that. I was like, oh my gosh. There was like way more behind the decisions. Earlier on we were talking about sort of hidden depth. No, this does sort of seem simple, like play a card, you're going to build a tableau, do stuff, but you can see right away, oh, I'm going to have to pay attention to this, this, and this. And my buddy here just went in this space. I want to go there too, but I can't do it because of this and that. Oh, I'm going to be playing this a lot, I think, over the rest of this year. My friend Daryl, I had mentioned earlier, he's got it. He fell in love with the game and I'd always wanted to try it. So thankfully, Daryl learned it first, so I didn't have to learn it. He just taught it to me, and he taught it in a way that, we played within, 20 minutes. But then I was like, oh, wow, there's way more going on here than I expected in a good way. And the game didn't, we were talking about games that don't overstay their welcome. I felt like this game right off the bat, I was like, we're going to be here for 3 hours. There's just so much going on, but we knocked it out, a 3-player game in like 90 minutes or so, maybe even less than that. But it moved really quickly for what it was. It's, similar to, I don't know, I guess Root in a way where they have the multi-use cards. Doesn't look like Root at all, but multi-use cards. And then it's a race to a certain number of victory points. But just the way you use those cards to get your, pieces on the map, and the fact that you're not tied into one faction, that really blew me away. It's like, oh, all of a sudden now I'm going to be the Brits this turn because I want this and that. So good. And I wish I could talk a little more in depth about it, but I am still it was one to play, and I felt like there's so much to discover there, and I'm really excited about getting it back to the table. PAX Pamir 2nd edition. Have you all played this one?
Only the first edition.
Yeah.
A long
did you
time
play
ago.
It yeah, we tried playing it, but it was a learning game, and our friend Richard was teaching us.
Did I play it? I feel like it's so long ago now.
Yeah. it was the first edition. And then I'm also not 100% clear because there's different PAX games, right? I believe.
You definitely played PAX Pamir.
Was it PAX Pamir?
It was definitely PAX Pamir.
Yeah. But at the time, it was first edition, and it was also a living rules. It didn't come with a rule book. It was like the official rules were living rules that they updated and kept online. And we were trying to learn from that. So we didn't quite get the full experience and didn't play a full game. So I've only tasted it.
And it's still a very small box. Is that right? For the 2nd edition?
Yeah. It's, it all actually reminded me of like, oh, this could totally be like a Devere game, that smallish type
very
box.
Small, lots of game, right?
lots of tons of game. Yeah. That's what it reminded me of.
Oh. Well, our last game pick, is not, I wouldn't necessarily call it a heavy game. We were originally going to try to play an Age Contrived as our heavy game. And then that was like, it's a hefty rule book. I actually, because we know the creator and we helped, I actually saw some things that I couldn't help, like, because I'm an editor by trade. So I'm like, hey, I want to correct a few things because I saw an early edition of the rule book. And so I actually helped copy edit the rule book. Well, one of many people, but we didn't quite finish the game. We're just getting into it, and we're just like,
we had people coming up.
Yeah, and so we had to put it away. So we didn't make it in time for this podcast, but we did get in the search for UAPs. Which UAP stands for Unidentified
Anomalous Phenomena.
It's basically the modern word for UFOs because they're not necessarily all flying, I guess, is the idea.
Wait, so we don't say UFO anymore? Really? That's a thing?
I mean, you can, but I think the more scientific term for when they see random things that could be UFOs, they call them UAPs.
UAP. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, because I think a UFO implies there's an object flying, but UAPs can be like, okay, this broadens the definition of what these things could be, and UFOs, traditional UFOs, fall under UAPs
because it could be like a space object or something like that.
That's my understanding, but I've only learned about UAPs because of this game when they first announced this game. So the basic idea, this is from Renegade, and then they created a game, the Search For series. The Search For Planet X was their first game. Then the Search For Lost Species, and these are all logic deduction games of where you're searching for something, several things, and then the game will start through the help of an app. They'll give you little hints like, okay, like for example, in the Search For Planet X, it might tell you a comet is never next to a gas cloud. So you have this little sheet of paper. You're like, okay, now using those pieces of logic, you'll start to kind of figure out like, okay, that means a meteor couldn't be here, or comet couldn't be here, asteroid couldn't be here, but this has to be a gas cloud. And you start kind of filling in the blanks and being the first one
smells like a gas cloud
to find the Planet X. Or the Lost Species was a more jungle themed, about expeditions to find lost species of animals in the jungle.
And it added in worker movement.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we love these games. Like
I loved it. Games.
So you might have heard other games like Archaeologic is in this, like the Loot of Lima. Cryptid is a famous one. Treasure Island, or I think something like that. Anyways, I think the Search For series is the best one of all of them. Like I think these games all
my favorites.
They're my favorites as well. So Ted Alspach, who is the designer and owner of Bezier Games, which is not Renegade Games, which makes these games. Renegade was telling this at Gen Con last year. They said he actually is a big fan of these games as well and asked to design one. So this is a collaboration between Ted, who's a designer and owns his own company, wanted to design the next game in this series for Renegade. So he designed this one. And the idea is like you have this 360-degree view of the sky and you're searching for UAPs. So
and you are on Earth.
Yeah, you're on Earth. So you taught this game, tell more.
So like the production value is fantastic on it. So you have the board that has like a light magnetic thing, and the board has like the outer space, sort of outer orbit ring, and then you stick the smaller ring on top, and that's where Earth is and where the inner orbit is. As in real life, the Earth rotates. We are not a flat Earth. And so as it's rotating, the sky that you're able to see changes at the same time. So this adds an extra layer to search for Planet X type situations where your scientist or observer may be moving around on Earth to different sectors so you can see different parts of the sky, and that's going to take some time. And also, the Earth is naturally going to rotate after a certain amount of time, essentially, that when all the players have moved past a milestone. And so that's going to automatically change, so you have to account for the fact that the sky's going to change. You might need to move to do the things that you need to do also, and then it just adds a couple layers to make it, I'd say, the heaviest one of the three in terms of like how you have to logic things out, you know? Okay. So you have your own tiny little like board thing that you can switch around at the same time. And then you're recording all of this, but they added in, instead of like having a piece of paper, because you need to rotate it, they give you wet erase markers so that you can't smudge them out of the way by accident, things like that. So that added an interesting layer, because I see why they did the wet erase, but it was a little bit awkward to get used to, but it does clean up a lot better and stuff. The logic is still there. You know, there's a lot more objects. We just dived straight into advanced mode because we were playing with people that all played Planet X at least before, and I think that was the right move. I enjoyed it a lot. I love logic deduction games, and so this, I think, is a worthy successor. Added some very interesting things. I actually sort of want to play the solo mode, which I never really do in games. I don't know if it's my favorite, but I'm glad I played it, and I would play it again. So
yeah, awesome. I agree. I think in order of their releases, the order you should play these. Like Planet X is the simplest and cleanest. Lost Species is a good step up, but I like that one's for its theme. I thought was done really well with the different animals living in different environments on this island. This one's definitely the most complex, and but another cool part is, so the Earth part, the inner orbit, is divided into 4 quadrants, and in the beginning of the game, is it random? You select which ones, or they're recommended?
You, but you can switch it out. But the app gives you a random selection of different powers or abilities that are attached to each quadrant that your scientist might be in. So.
Yeah, and so some of those are really rewarding. It might be like you can survey this area a certain number of sectors. So when you're surveying, you're looking for something, you might be like, tell me how many meteors are in these 8 spaces. And then the app will tell you there are 2. And so that's where you start taking notes, and you're starting to figure out like, okay, if there's only 2 and they follow these placement rules, and then you blah, 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 you logic that stuff out. So the beginning power for that sector might be like all surveys cost 1 in this area. So it's like a big discount. Or another area is like you could survey 2 different objects. So I stayed in that quadrant for like 3/4 of the game. It's like, this is such a good deal. I'm learning so much. And then there's like another sector, and then some of them could have bad effects. I think that one touch is really neat, because that means every board, every time you play, is going to be very different from the other, depending on what kind. And they gave you a ton of these little modifiers for each sector. So you could customize the games, you could randomize it. It sets up the game very differently. I think that one thing is the coolest addition, and it makes this one worthy to check out on its own. But I do not like those wet erase markers. I might actually try doing dry erase markers. The risk is if you erase some of these little circles or X's you're making all over your board, then you've lost that information. You're just like, crap, I'm really messed it up.
App still has history, but it is.
But the problem with the wet erase marker is we've all had these brand new wet erase markers that came with the game. At some point feel like it's running out, and we had to kind of get it going again, and we weren't sure like it just felt like it dried up almost immediately. So we're still kind of figuring that out.
They need time to recover weirdly after you write. It's like it'll come back, but you just can't use it for a little while. Which
it's such a weird form. We're all used to dry erase markers as board gamers, and it's like no one's ever really used wet erase markers. But
interesting.
Have you played the Lost Search For games?
I have. So I am not a deduction game guy at all. I'm horrible at them. And I always joke around, like, if I was like a detective and I'm playing one of those detective deduction games, all the bad guys are getting away, no matter what. If Detective Ruel's here, like, y'all are getting away with every single crime you can commit. But I loved Search for Planet X. I absolutely loved just something about the theme, the way it worked, and you know how games make you feel smart. That one, I'm taking like little notes. I'm going to have it peer reviewed and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, I love the theme, but I would always lose. I've only won it a few times solo, right? And that's just the way my brain works. I'm like, it's just not my jam, but I love the gameplay and the theme of the first one. Second one was a little more difficult. So of course I was even worse at that, but this one, I want to give it a shot. I mean, I know I'm going to be terrible at it, but I really like the fact that they sort of went back to the whole space thing. And maybe it's because I just rewatched Contact last night with Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey. Great movie. And it's just about, those, anomalies out there and like, is there, alien life forms, whatever. And this just seems really cool. And I totally want to give it a shot. Again, it probably won't make my top 10 list, but the fact that I love the Search for Planet X so much, that one actually might have been like my top 3 of that year, if not my favorite game. Even though I'm terrible at it, I can appreciate the gameplay and the way they work the theme into it and everything.
And you can
I'm excited to give it a shot,
adjust your beginning information, and you can get more hints because it's to even it out.
Yeah, and that's what I do like about these games where, a beginner like me can get more information, whereas if I'm playing Christina, like, you don't get to use the app, or whatever it is, to even things out, right?
This is actually what happens when we play. So Christina wouldn't allow this for our first game of Search for UAPs because she's like, we're all on equal footing. She won, of course.
But you were very close, actually.
I was really close. Like one of the negative quadrants things happened to affect me and just me. And so it's just bad luck. So I guess that is weird for that one particular attribute that we started the game with is like no points are scored for photographs in this sector.
So that instead of like proposing theories in this game, you're taking photographs that might score you points.
That get verified and such.
Yeah.
So by random luck, that's how the game ended with my highest scoring photo not scoring any points.
Just kidding.
But anyways, that's besides that, it's definitely the most complex of the ones of this series, but I do really like it. It was like very rewarding at the end where you can see it's just a slow buildup of all these search for games where it's like, we're getting close, but who's going to find it first? But yeah, Christina is so good at these games. So after a while with all these other games, we're always like, she has to start at a more advanced difficulty with less information to start. And then she'll still end up winning somehow. Yes, a lot. More than your fair share.
Nice.
I mean, it should be fair then, isn't it? If it's skill. Thanks for talking so many games with us. That was a ton. I'm excited for a lot of the things that you said too. And thanks for joining us today, Ruel. Where can people follow you and all of the things you do?
Yeah, thanks again for having me. It's always great to talk to you all about games. Can't wait to see you at Gen Con. Even though we live only like an hour away from each other, we got to travel across the country to actually hang out. I love that. Folks, you can find me at Ruel Gaviola on the socials. I do a bunch of things in the board game industry. These days, you can find me on the Good Time Society channel every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Becca Scott and I do a show called Good Morning Society. It's like our take on Good Morning America, but with board games. And then Tuesdays at noon, I'm on the Rahdo Runs Through channel doing the R&R show. We talk about games and rank them. And I do a bunch of other stuff. Just follow me on the socials at Ruel Gaviola.
That's funny because I just realized you mentioned Becca Scott. She's on our new season of the Board Game Quiz Show, and you're a veteran of the Board Game Quiz Show as well.
I am the reigning season 1 champion. Is that right?
Yes, you are.
I set Ruel up for that.
I love that.
Going to mention it
like a pro.
So we, as Shu mentioned, keep an eye out for that. We have just released our first episode, maybe another one by the time this podcast comes out. And we have all really very cool content creators for season 5. So check that out. And of course, thanks to our amazing editor, Mike Zipkin. And we hope everybody enjoyed our show today. Give us a little rating or review if you liked it. And now you can stop listening, go play a game. Bye.
Bye.